practice so you can do it on your own. So we're trying to find our maximum yield. So I'm going to just write yield, right? You're going to get, right? It's based on how many trees you have and apples per tree. So if I put number of trees, and here apples per tree, that would be how many total apples I would get if I multiplied those together, right? If you did it the other order, apples per tree and number of trees, it works out to be the same thing. So here's my yield. I start off with how many trees? 20. When I have 20 trees, there's 300 apples per tree. Each time I add one tree plus x, my apples per tree only go down by 10. Sorry, thank you. Go down by 10. Yes? Well, this part here, right, is always the start. So you always have 20, 300, I'm going to produce 6,000. And that's if everything else was gone. Like if I would erase this part and this part, then my production or my yield would be 6,000. Now what happens is every time I add a tree, so we say plus, and I use x because I don't know how many trees I'm going to add, but each time I add a tree, I take off 10 apples. So we think if x is 1, I take off 10 once. If x is 2, I take off 10 twice. Yeah. Yeah, and this is for all yield questions or all profit questions will always be set up that way. So there's sort of a trick that way in that you can say, I know that if it's 20, I get 300. That's when x is 0, right? That still works. If x is 0, I'm going to have 6,000 apples. We'll just make a little note what x our x is the number of trees that we add. And now it's just completing the square again. It would make a difference if you mixed the 20 and the 300 but didn't change the x's. If you took this bracket and put it first and that bracket second, it wouldn't make a difference. But if you put the 300 here, that would mean you have 300 trees. And then you adding trees to that. And each tree would only be producing 20 apples. And you add one more tree, and then it only produces 10 apples. So yes, it would make a big difference that way. That's why I always like to write out in words what I'm thinking about beforehand so that my numbers make sense. Now when we multiply this out, we get 6,000 minus 200x plus 300x minus 10x squared. Rewrite it in the right order. Factor out the negative 10. Add your spaces. Divide by 2 and square, plus 25. What have we actually done? Subtracted 250, so the opposite. Add 250. So our vertex is 5, 6250. Again, I like to label these things. This is going to be our maximum yield because it's our y value, and our y in this case is a y, which stood for yield. This is the x that's going to get that. If we go back, what does x stand for? Number of trees added. So how many trees per acre are we going to have? If I put a 5 in there, I'm going to have 25 trees per acre. And each tree is going to produce now an average of 250 apples. Because if I put 5 in for x, then this side would be 25, and this side is going to be 250. And if I do 25 times 250, I get my 6250. So we should have 25 trees per acre. Yeah, get an idea for it. Now we've done 4 of these max min ones that are profit-like.